Thank you for listening to The Leader. Hi, I'm David Marsland. How did Westminster turn a blind eye to child sex abuse for decades?
It talks in the report about a culture of cruising around Piccadilly Circus, looking at what was described as the meat market of boys and young men who were being picked up by older men.
Our Home Affairs editor Martin Bentham on the explosive report that claims a cover-up within political institutions. And
he did everything in the Harvey Weinstein playbook, all the different measures that he'd been using for decades, it sounds like, to silence people and control people and exert power over people. And he'd got away with it for a really, really long time.
The Evening Standard's Phoebe Luckhurst on the impact of Harvey Weinstein's conviction. But do British courts need to catch up with the Me Too movement? Taken from the Evening Standard's editorial column, this is The Leader. For the whole thing, pick up the newspaper or head to standard.co.uk/comment. In a moment, how the protection of political reputations led to child abuse being ignored. An official report concluded politicians and institutions at Westminster turned a blind eye to sex abuse against children for decades to protect their own reputations. The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse says there's ample evidence of abusers linked to Westminster carrying out crimes and that nobody seemed to care about the fate of the children involved. The Evening Standard's Home Affairs editor Martin Bentham was at the release of the report and joins me now. Martin, this seems to be describing a cover-up by powerful people for decades.
What has happened today is that the report has been published by the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, which was set up by Theresa May some time ago to look into allegations of sexual abuse by prominent people in institutions, and there have been a number of these reports already produced. Today's report was into what people at Westminster knew about activities that were taking place there, and indeed whether there were activities at all. But what today's report did conclude was that there had been a systematic failure at Westminster by institutions, whether that be political parties, ministers within government, the police and other institutions, to take serious account of the welfare of victims when incidents did emerge of people being subject to sexual abuse. Now, there are several cases cited in this. The most notorious ones, I think, involve the former Liberal MP Cyril Smith and the former Conservative MP Sir Peter Morrison. Those are two very graphic examples. There's another example of police corruption cited, or ongoing issue of police corruption in the 1970s, 1980s and so on, where it talks in the report about how a culture of cruising around Piccadilly Circus, looking at what was described as the meat market of boys and young men who were being picked up by older men, and police knowing and in effect conniving in this activity, this predatory activity, which would involve people who were below the age of consent and therefore victims of abuse.
How did all this go unreported by politicians?
In the case of Smith, what today's report shows is that the then Liberal leader, David Steel, later Lord Steel, was told about these allegations, and indeed was told by Cyril Smith himself after the publication of allegations in Private Eye, told by Cyril Smith himself that the allegations were true, that he'd been abusing young boys, and Cyril and David Steel did nothing about that. That's described as an abdication of political responsibility by the report today. Similarly, in the case of Peter Morrison, concerns were raised with the Cabinet Secretary in 1986 by MI5 about Peter Morrison's activities in his predilection for boys, young boys, and nothing again happened. And indeed, Peter Morrison was subsequently promoted to be energy minister in 1987. A year later, after these allegations were communicated, he was subsequently made parliamentary private secretary by Margaret Thatcher and then knighted in 1991. And it's unclear from the report today whether Lady Thatcher, as she became knew about these allegations at the time. There are conflicting reports about that. Conflicting testimony has been given to the inquiry about that. So the today's report draws no conclusions about that. But what it does say was that Peter Morrison's threat to young boys was known by senior officials, and yet, again, nothing was done.
And Martin, what's been the reaction to this report?
The reaction, I think, at Westminster will be one of embarrassment, one of shame. The report makes a number of recommendations for political parties about ensuring that they have proper safeguarding procedures in place. I'm sure they'll all be saying they do, and that they want to prevent this happening again. But one thing that is concerning in the report is that it also makes the point that it was until very recently that this culture of denial, culture of failure to confront these problems and the desire to protect reputation ahead of the welfare of victims, that until very recently was a problem. And so one would have thought that would have changed some time ago, but in fact it seems not to have done from the evidence that's been given to the inquiry. But it certainly will, I think, serve as a powerful warning that full attention needs to be paid and action needs to be taken when concerns are raised, and not sort of swept under the carpet as has obviously been happening.
We have more coverage on that report in the newspaper and also online at standard.co.uk.